competitive analysis. We all know in formulating business strategy, managers must consider the strategies of the firm's competitors. In this lesson, we will discuss competitors' analysis framework, explain rivalry analysis, discuss competitive dynamics, and explain competitive rivalry. After going through this presentation, you should be able to explain competitors' future objectives, current strategies, assumptions and capabilities, rivalry analysis, competitive dynamics, and competitive rivalry. The purpose of the competitive framework is to present the data in a way that makes it easy to compare the various sites across the different criteria. Michael Porter presented a framework for analyzing competitors. This framework is based on the following 4 key aspects of a competitor: competitor's future objectives, competitor's current strategy, competitor's assumptions, and competitor's capabilities. In future objective, we measure that how do our goals compare to our competitors' goals. What is the attitude towards risk? Where will emphasis be placed in the future? Then does our current strategy support changes in the competitive environment? What assumptions do our competitors hold about the future of industry and themselves? How do our capabilities compare to our competitors? Next is response. What will our competitors do in the future? Where do we have a competitive advantage? How will this change our relationship with our competition? A competitor analysis should include the more important existing competitors as well as potential competitors, such as those firms that might enter the industry, for example, by extending their present strategy or by vertically integrating. Rivalry among competitors in an industry refers to the extent to which firms within an industry put pressure on one another and limit each other's profit potential. Porter's intensity of rivalry in an industry affects the competitive environment and influences the ability of existing firms to achieve profitability. High intensity of rivalry means competitors are aggressively targeting each other's markets and aggressively pricing products. Several factors determine the intensity of competitive rivalry in an industry. If the industry consists of numerous competitors, Porter rivalry will be more intense. When analyzing a given industry, all of the aforementioned factors regarding the intensity of competitive rivalry Porter placed among existing competitors may not apply. When conducting Porter's 5 forces industry analysis, low intensity of rivalry makes an industry more attractive and increases profit potential for the firms already competing within that industry, while high intensity of rivalry makes an industry less attractive and decreases profit potential for the firms already competing within that industry. The intensity of rivalry among existing firms is one of the factors to consider when analyzing the structural environment of an industry using Porter's 5 forces framework. To explain competitive dynamics, we discuss the effects of varying rates of competitive speed in different markets, called slow cycle, fast cycle, and standard cycle markets, on the behavior, which are actions and responses, of all competitors within a given market. Slow cycle markets in which the firm's competitive advantages are shielded from imitation for what are commonly long periods of time where imitation is costly. Competitive advantages are sustainable in slow cycle markets. Building on of a kind competitive advantage that is proprietary leads to competitive success in a slow cycle market. The competitive dynamics in slow cycle markets involve all firms concentrating on competitive actions and responses that enable them to protect, maintain, and extend their proprietary competitive advantage. Fast cycle markets are markets in which the firm's capabilities that contribute to competitive advantages are not shielded from imitation and where imitation is often rapid and inexpensive. Competitive dynamics in fast cycle markets, in which all firms seek to achieve new competitive advantages before competitors, learn how to effectively respond to current ones, often resulting in rapid product upgrades as well as quick product innovations. Standard cycle markets are those in which the firm's competitive advantages are moderately shielded from imitation and where imitation is moderately costly. The competitive dynamics in standard cycle markets rest midway between the characteristics of dynamics in slow cycle and fast cycle markets. The quickness of imitation is reduced and becomes more expensive for standard cycle competitors when a firm is able to develop economies of scale by combining coordinated and integrated design and manufacturing processes with a large sales volume. Go through the table. Competitive rivalry or competitive dynamics begin with an assessment of competitors' awareness and motivation to attack and/or respond to competitive moves. Market commonality and resource similarity are affected by a company's awareness, and motivation affects the likelihood of attack or response. The likelihood of attack and response result in competitive outcomes, with outcomes moderated by a company's ability to take strategic actions or responses. Feedback from competitive outcomes will affect future competitive dynamics by affecting the nature of a company's awareness, motivation, and ability for action or response. Firms use both strategic and tactical actions when forming their competitive actions and competitive responses in the course of engaging in competitive rivalry. A first mover is a firm that takes an initial competitive action to build or to defend its competitive advantages or to improve its market position. A second mover is a firm that responds to the first mover's competitive action, typically through imitation. More cautious than the first mover, the second mover studies customers' reactions to product innovations. A late mover is a firm that responds to a competitive action, but only after considerable time has elapsed after the first mover's action and the second mover's response. An organization's size affects the likelihood that it will take competitive actions as well as the types of actions it will take and their timing. The success of a firm's competitive action is affected both by the likelihood that a competitor will respond to it and by the type, strategic or tactical, and effectiveness of that response. In the context of competitive rivalry, an actor is the firm taking an action or response. Reputation is the positive or negative attribute ascribed by one rival to another based on past competitive behavior. Market dependence denotes the extent to which a firm's revenues or profits are derived from a particular market. Now let us check if we have understood the various concepts discussed in this lesson clearly. The competitor's organizational structure provides clues as to which functions of the company are deemed to be more important. Right or wrong? Right. The assumptions that a competitor's managers hold about their firm and their industry help to define the moves that they will consider. Right or wrong? Right. Porter's intensity of rivalry in an industry affects the competitive employee and influences the ability of existing firms to achieve profitability. Right or wrong? Wrong. Before we end, Let us briefly revise what we have studied till so far. Competitor analysis is an important part of a firm's development of its strategy. Its importance lies in the understanding of competitors, their strategy and resources, and capabilities. More specifically, competitor analysis also allows a firm to assess its own firm versus competitors and plan for what competitors' actions may be as a reaction to actions the firm may take. The intensity of rivalry among competitors in an industry refers to the extent to which firms within an industry put pressure on one another and limit each other's profit potential. Porter's intensity of rivalry in an industry affects the competitive environment and influences the ability of existing firms to achieve profitability. Competitive dynamics in fast cycle markets, in which all firms seek to achieve new competitive advantages before competitors learn how to effectively respond to current ones, often result in rapid product upgrades as well as quick product innovations. Competitive rivalry or competitive dynamics begin with an assessment of competitors' awareness and motivation to attack and/or respond to competitive moves.